JT Westerstell of Locked On Utes. We talked a couple months ago, and it wasn't that controversial, that this could be the final year for Kyle Whittingham at Utah. A successor was put in place. It felt like this was the season where Utah had to do something. They would have to do something monumentally bad to miss the college football playoff, and now that's where we are. Do you expect Whit to hang it up on such a low note? Because we were ready for the highest note and for him to have a swan song.
I don't know anymore. And when I brought up those predictions in the past, those were always just, once again, like what I felt like was going to happen. It wasn't like, I was hearing this is Kyle Whittingham's last year. Here's what I looked at heading into the season. Named a successor. Also, literally at media day says, I probably won't be here in 2027. Like, does a coach say that if he's not strongly considering retirement? He was on Jim Rome's show and said he was day to day. So I still believe that like Utah wanted this to be the swan song, like you said. Utah could ride off into the sunset with Kyle Whittingham. They make the college football playoff, do something they hadn't done before in history, maybe win the Big 12 and then exit stage left from there. But this has just been a disaster. And do you want this to be your last season if you're Kyle Whittingham? I don't know. I mean, the program has been able to run itself in the past. So I don't know how much on like the day-to-day operations, like does he need to do in a point of where can he not give it one more run back? I got to believe he's strongly considering that, right? Does he really want this to be his final season? Originally, I thought he did when it was going to go to form and everything was going to be good. But I wonder with the competitor that Kyle Whittingham is, and I've heard he's a crazy competitor. That much I have heard. Does he really want to go out on the worst season he's had? I mean, this is a Utah team that haven't been under 500 since 2013. And literally, once again, what I think will probably go down as the most disappointing year ever for Utah football. Do you want that to be your final year? Maybe you're fed up with the current state of college football. Maybe you're ready for Morgan Scalley to take over, whatever it is. But I just feel like I really don't know. I genuinely don't know. He might come back for one more year, or he might be fed up with everything and be done. It's just wild. We're here, and I have no idea what Kyle Whittingham wants to do as normal, because Kyle loves to keep things close to the vest. I'm
going to ask you to speculate here, which is always tough, but we'll tiptoe around it a bit. From the rhetoric you've gotten in a Kyle Whittingham press conference, which the guy says sometimes a lot, sometimes nothing. You're like, okay, crazy Uncle Kyle showed up this week, or he's just the most mellow coach speak guy in the world. Have you gotten the sense that he's tired or worn out, or that college football, similar to how it did Nick Saban, has passed by Kyle Whittingham?
I would say no. I'm thinking about like how he handled his press conferences last year. I mean, I will say he's probably still just tired and frustrated about all the injuries and things there. But there's just cracks in the armor this year with Utah. There haven't been in the past. Mekhi Bernard in the post-game press conference was asked, what's wrong with this Utah football team? Mekhi says, I know, but I'm not going to say it. What? Utah doesn't do that. That's not the type of thing that happens at Utah, but now that is starting to happen, right? You get the cryptic tweets from all the players frustrated about their roles. I think Dorian Singer, like a week or two ago, put something on his Instagram story about how basically he was being wasted and he was frustrated about his use in the offense. Like there's just things are changing with this Utah football team. You know, Andy Ludwig stepped down because he didn't have answers, right? Like Utah not having answers, like that one of your offensive coordinators saying he doesn't have answers. And that whole situation is obviously a whole mess in of itself of everything there. But I don't know. I really don't. I feel like Kyle right now, if I had to switch, I would maybe think he comes back for one more year, but I feel so 50-50 right now. He might be burned out, and it might be better for Utah to move forward with Morgan Scalley. You can't move on from Kyle Whittingham. It's Kyle Whittingham. He's done everything, but like in the modern world of college football, it might be better to let Morgan get a run at it than give Kyle another year. I really don't know what he wants to do. He's very frustrated. Clearly, Utah poured a lot into this season, and it has not gone to plan at all. Especially it just hurts, but like if Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose are your quarterback options next year, and I still think there's a chance Isaac can be better next year, but it's hard to see yourself contending in the Big 12 right now with the way Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose have looked. And that's just literally based on how they've played. So yeah, I really don't know what Kyle's going to do here. I really feel 50-50 on it. This has changed so much since the season started. I got to believe, because this is not the fairy tale ending that he had hoped. It has instead been a brutal disappointment for Utah. You know, JT, the optic of ushering out, that's the way I'm going to put it, ushering out your offensive coordinator. This wasn't you know what, you're right, bye. I do believe there was pressure for Ludwig to step down. Can you retire off of that? Can you usher out your OC, miss a bowl game, and say,
I've had the most legendary career of anyone at Utah. They're going to build a statue of me. Good night, 4-8.
I mean, if you don't feel you're the best person to run the program any longer, I'm not saying Kyle Whittingham does that, but who did we just see do it? Tony Bennett at Virginia felt he was no longer the best person to run that basketball program. With the current state of college football and the way this season has gone, Kyle Whittingham may just decide at the end of this, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Once again, there's two ways to look at this. You could look at it from, this is not how Kyle Whittingham wants to go out, but you could also look at it from the standpoint of, I'm done. If Kyle Whittingham might just be like that, I'm done. I've accomplished so much with this team. They are going to build him a statue, as we mentioned. Yeah. The ending was not fantastic. A lot of coaches don't have fantastic endings to their career, by the way. I think about so many legendary coaches who doesn't go their way their final season, and that's definitely not gone Utah's way so far. So really fascinated to see what Kyle Whittingham will do. I'd be curious too, like, what's the timing of this announcement? Would they make it before the bowl game if it happens? I feel like if he doesn't make it before the bowl game, then the odds are more likely that he comes back. Just because I don't think he's a farewell tour type of guy, but the university might feel the pressure of being like, hey, like, you're Kyle Whittingham. Like, we want to give you at least this month to celebrate you. So a lot up in the air with Kyle Whittingham, a lot up in the air about the future of Utah football. This was a team that for the last 5 years has been a top 25 college football program. They are so far from that right now that there is a chance this has long-term ramifications to their culture and just the program that they've built. It is hard to see any world where this team starts next year ranked in the top 25 too. And that is wild that we are talking about this in what was supposed to be Utah's year to make a run and do something historic. And instead they have absolutely face planted.
Let's leave you with this, JT. If this is the final season for Kyle Whittingham, how does that affect his legacy at Utah, given this is the last impression fans will get?
I don't think too much. I think there will be a little bit of a sore taste in the mouth for how the season turned out. But I think at the end of the day, you look at all of the great things that Kyle Whittingham did, and one disappointing season in the Big 12 cannot dwarf those two conference championships that Utah was able to win in the Pac-12. To be Utah from the Mountain West, like just the crazy rise they had, to be that team that was under 500 a couple of those years, to find a way to beat the likes of USC and Oregon, not just once in a season, but twice in both of those years. Like, that's massive. The reason Utah football is what it is today is because of Kyle Whittingham. And that cannot be lost just because these last 2 years have not been very good by the past standard. But Kyle Whittingham, we already said, build him the statue. You know, they call it Saban Field at Alabama. I'd love to see Whitfield at Utah. I think he's absolutely deserved it, or something there, even more so than just the statue. What Kyle Whittingham has meant to Utah football's elevation can't be put into words. We talked a lot about how Utah, if they could, would have loved to be invited into the Big Ten. And Utah wasn't quite up to the caliber of those other schools yet. But the only reason that Utah was in the conversation for the Big Ten, and the only reason that Utah was let into the Big 12, is because of what Kyle Whittingham has done for this program. He, in my opinion, is the best coach they've ever had, and he is still overall one of the current best coaches in college football, but might be time to leave.
He's a legend. He's a legend. JT, for the listeners of Locked On Big 12 who want to follow more Utah Utes Jazz, and by the way, there are very few, I'm going to say this, there are very few team beat reporters, as you are. You're a beat reporter for Utah. You report on the Utah Utes and only the Utah Utes at Locked On Utes, that will tell it like it is, be straight up, and not be afraid of some sort of repercussion, negative repercussion, or the fan base being upset. People who call it like it is when it's good and when it's bad. JT Westersill is one of those, whether you like it or not. Where can folks find more of your work?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. At Locked On Utes, can follow on X and on YouTube as well. We'll be talking a lot about what's to come for Utah, and always a blast joining you on these shows, Drake. Thanks for having me on.
It's a big risk being objective, but JT does it. This has been and always will be. You come back the rest of the week. We'll give you all kinds of breakdown from Utah to everybody else in the Big 12 and those contending at the very top of the conference on a Locked On Big 12 and a Locked On Utes. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Crossover. This has been Locked On Utes and Locked On Dose Grande.